amazing panelists to say hello and tell us a little bit more about themselves. Amy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with everyone. I am currently located in Oakland, California, but actually grew up in New York City. So it's really great to see so much representation from both coasts and everything in between. I am currently, as Linda mentioned, an account executive at a financial services company called Aon, which isn't that directly tied to STEM, just to be totally honest, but have worked at tech startups as well as an AI education nonprofit, focusing on increasing diversity in the field of artificial intelligence specifically. It's called AI for All, and that's really where I learned so much about AI specifically, which I'm really happy to share with everyone today. And I continue to be involved, as Linda mentioned, in the Women in AI Ethics Council to make sure that we're highlighting the diversity that does exist in the field. And also, I am also a client success advisor to an AI-powered startup called Summary. So a little bit also highlighting that your career can take many twists and many paths, and it doesn't have to be linear in any way. And yeah, look forward to sharing more about that and hearing from all the panelists as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya, and I founded a company called Intersecting Lines, and it's for people who love math and for people who really need math to do what they love. I support mission-driven organizations and leaders to really use math and data to help them make business decisions, to improve their programs, but most importantly, to tell their story of how they're making a difference in the world. Also, alongside an amazing group of women, I helped to co-create a conference called the Infinite Possibilities Conference. And this is a national conference really designed to support and empower women mathematicians from underrepresented groups. And I'll just say, as a girl, I had so many different interests. I wanted to be a writer, an actress. I wanted to be a journalist. I had so many things that I cared about. And I also really cared about the issues that were affecting my community, things like health and education. So when I started college, I really didn't know what to choose as a major. But fortunately, I had an amazing calculus teacher who encouraged me to select math as my major. So I kept taking math classes. I discovered I really enjoyed them. And the best part of all is that it gave me a way of connecting all the things that are so important to me and things that I was really passionate about. That's a little bit about me.
Hi, I'm Munira Tayabji. So yeah, I'm a visual effects supervisor, and I make animation films. And it's my responsibility to bring both artists and technologists together in creating these beautiful films that we see from DreamWorks. I have always had a passion for technology. As a kid, grew up making computers, building them, and spending a lot of time with technology, and ended up at UCLA thinking that I was going to go there for computer science. Ended up with a math degree and a specialization in computing. And while at UCLA, I didn't know what I was going to do with my math major. So I tried a bunch of different internships and landed an internship eventually at a visual effects company working on X-Men 2. And it was there that I realized that I could use technology and code to make beautiful art, and a passion that I had around for movies. So it was a really great way for me to find my calling in terms of career. And then 18 years later and 2 kids later, I find myself at DreamWorks. And I find myself lucky not only to have been able to have a career in something that I love, but also being in a position where I could share my story and really hope to inspire others. And at DreamWorks, I've had a passion for not only finding ways for bringing more women in technology and finding opportunities to share my story and provide an opportunity for others to continue to bring art and technology together. And I'm happy to talk about that more on the panel. Thank you.
And hi, my name is Randi. And when I was a girl, I wasn't sure what I wanted to be, but my best guess was like maybe I wanted to be a teacher because I had really nice teachers. And then one day I was watching a movie and there was like this character who was talking to another character who's like older and he was trying to impress him. And the older character was like, "Hey, where did you go to school?" And then the character was like, "I went to MIT, grad and undergrad." And the other guy looked really impressed. I was like, "Oh, it's MIT." So I looked it up and I found this really cool place. There are lots of people who are engineers, so those are people who build things. And they really had a mission to build things to help others. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. I'm going to do that. And a bunch of other things later and a bunch of other, I don't know, TV inspirations and whatnot, I found myself doing just that. When I went to college, I majored in computer engineering, and now I am a Ph.D. student, which didn't know what that was until after I started college. But one of my mentors was like, "Hey, you can be a leader in science and technology, and the way to do that is to get a PhD." And so, fast forward a little bit and boom, I'm doing that PhD and I'm at MIT. So I build robots, and I build robots to help children learn. Right now I'm teaching children AI. My favorite memories in the summer was transforming my living room into a robotics lab because our lab got shut down and I had to build things. And I'm super excited to hear about all the other panelists and their cool adventures and share a little bit about my story too.
Oh, thank you all, Amy, Tanya, Munira, and Randi. We're excited to learn more. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Kelly Reyna from the National Girls Collaborative Project. Hi, Kelly.
Thank you, Linda. I'm Kelly Reyna from the National Girls Collaborative Project. I'm going to give a little bit of background about the NGCP, and then I'll talk about the Girls Advisory Board. The vision of the National Girls Collaborative Project is to bring together organizations committed to informing and encouraging girls to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, math, and computer science. NGCP helps to share resources with programs serving girls across the United States and globally as the Global Girls Collaborative. The Girls Advisory Board is a group of young women and girls from across the country from a variety of backgrounds and STEM interests. They provide important feedback for NGCP initiatives and are offered various unique resources to help them in their STEM pursuits. We have some members of our Girls Advisory Board here tonight to ask questions to our panelists, so I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves now, starting with Shreya.
Hi all, my name is Shreya and I'm from New Jersey. I'm currently in 11th grade, and one interesting fact about me would be that I'm very much a night person over mornings.
Hi, my name is Caroline and I'm a junior and I live in North Carolina. And one fun fact about me is that I really like dogs and I have 2 dogs in my house.
Hi, my name is Cynthia. I'm from Georgia. And one fun fact about me is that I love learning about different cultures and languages, including ASL, the Spanish language and culture. And I love to see how that intersects with my STEM passion, which is cognitive and behavioral neuroscience.
Hi, I'm Hansa. I'm from Texas and I'm in 8th grade. And a fun fact about me is that I'm the author of 2 technical books.
Hi everyone, my name is Renuka and I'm a junior from Illinois. And something interesting about me is that I'm really interested in writing. I love to write, and I'm also interested in medicine.
Hi, I'm Ananya. I'm a senior from California, and a fun fact about me is that I like to crochet and knit in my free time.
Great, so I'm going to turn it over now to Renuka. Renuka is another Girls Advisory Board member, and she'll be the moderator for tonight's event.
Hey everyone, I'm Renuka. I'm a senior at Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School, which is in Kentucky. And today, members of our Girls Advisory Board have prepared really thoughtful questions for our speakers tonight. And following questions by the Girls Advisory Board, we will be opening it up for questions from the chat. So feel free to type any questions that you may have in there during the course of the discussion. So firstly, we're going to have Shreya, who's going to kick things off for us.
So this first question is for Amy. How do you see AI changing in the next couple of years or so?
Thanks, Shreya. That's a really great question. I think one thing that we're going to see from AI is that it's really, the first thing that I think we're going to see is that it's really going to start to impact all of our lives more. A recent Gallup poll showed that about 85% of all Americans use AI today without even knowing it, whether that's your Instagram. I don't actually know very much about Instagram. I just hear that it resonates with people, but like whatever your recommendations are on Instagram or TikTok and things like that, or Netflix, which I am more familiar with. But it's just going to increasingly affect the way we live, we work, we learn, we play. And I think because of how much it's going to become embedded in our lives, it's going to become a much more human-centered discipline. And I think we're already making steps in that direction where a lot of experts in the field are not just making AI for the sake of AI. Like Randi mentioned, right? She's trying to use AI to help people learn, which means she has to interact with actual people and students and young people to really understand how that works. So I think that really opens the door to a lot more creativity and a lot more interdisciplinary teams, because you can't just have a technical expert in a room designing these solutions that are supposed to work for a large variety of people. And I think it's yes, AI is artificial intelligence, and it's a broad category which we can talk about as well. But I think hopefully because of this need to really engage in real communities with real people, I'd really like to see also the amount of representation going up in the field today. Right now we're at about, depending on who's counting and how you count, but some estimates show as little as 20% of the field identify as female today. So of course those numbers get even more dismal when you layer in things like racial demographics, as well as LGBTQ and other levers of diversity. So really hoping that as we're looking to create solutions that affect more people, needing experts of all sorts of different variety, not just technical experts. Really hoping that to see that those numbers change.
Thank you for your response, Amy. Our next question is from Caroline.
This question is for Randi. So could you describe a time where you felt like giving up and almost did so? What or who helped you recover and stay determined?
Thanks, Caroline. So here's the story. I had an assignment before me, and it was like 5 questions, and I had like a week to do it. And I opened up like my book to start looking at the questions, and I literally had no idea where to start. And so like I read through like the whole chapter again, and I like looked at my notes in the lecture, and I still didn't know where to start. And I was like, okay, we got 5 questions. I can't even do the first one. Things are not looking good. What's interesting about the story is that it describes not just like the 5 questions that happened in college, but I also remember being in like 5th grade and having like a reading assignment and thinking like, I can't do this. And even now in grad school, there's so many problems that I'm faced with where I'm like, I don't think I'll be able to figure this out. And yeah, it happens a lot. My guess is it's pretty relatable. Like we always come up against challenges where we're like, how do we do this? But what helps is letting yourself remember that you're not alone. So I think there's like this perception that kind of freezes you up, that if there's a problem in front of you, like you have to solve it, and if you don't have the answer right there, then you can't do it. But at that moment in college, I remembered, wait, there are other people in my class. I can talk to them. I can talk to my professor. I can Google things. Like I don't have to figure this out just because I'm stumped alone. So called some friends, Actually got to meet the professor for the first time with that homework assignment, and I was totally able to figure it out. And when I was in 5th grade, I was also able by talking to my friends about it, even talking to sometimes like my grandparents who don't know exactly what I'm doing, but they know who I am. They're like really encouraging, like all of that stuff helps. So yeah, unsolvable problems, but what helps is just remembering that I have a team and I can rely on them, and they'll always be there.
Thank you, Randy, for your response. Our next question is from Cynthia.
Hey, so this next question is from Munira. I know earlier you were talking about your job working, it's an amazing job at DreamWorks and working in the intersection of STEM and art, you know? So I was wondering, how do you think artistic mindsets can benefit STEM fields?
Really great question. Especially when you think about something like animation. Animation is purely a product of both technical mindsets and artistic mindsets. In fact, you can't make an animated movie without both, because it takes someone with an artistic mindset to bring characters to life, and it takes a ton of technologists to build the computers and the software on which the animation is built. So it goes hand in hand, and I have to expect that most careers are that way, where a diversity of mindsets, a well-balanced set of people with different backgrounds and interests, you know, make every product better. But just specifically in animation, I spend a lot of years programming, and I'm also interested, I have a huge passion for movies. And so I found that whenever you had specifically people with who knew how a character wanted to perform. For example, let's say you were an animator and you needed to bring a horse to life. Well, I mean, you have to have an understanding of anatomy. You got to have an understanding of biology in order to create a realistic animation and have a believable horse moving on the screen. Same thing goes like with water. Let's say you're an artist and you need to put water on the screen. Well, you've got to have an understanding of physics, and vice versa. If you're writing the actual software of giving those artists the tools they need to perform these and create these different things on screen, you have to understand what is the artist trying to achieve? What's the goal that they're trying to, what is the effect that they're trying to create? Yeah. So I think, again, having a kind of a strong understanding of both sides, and if you don't, then leaning on a team member that does, again, having two people at the table with either or both makes a better product ultimately. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Munira. Our next question is from Hansa.
This question is for Tanya. Math is this very dynamic concept that's constantly developing. I'd like to know if there's any new areas of math that are being worked on.
Thank you, Hansa, for that question. I mean, there's so many different areas of math that are being developed, but I think what's really exciting for me is to see how math is being applied to solve everyday world problems. And not only does it really train your mind to think critically when you study mathematics, it gives you such practical tools. And more what we're seeing is how people are using data to tell the story, to communicate, and to really share really important information about issues that they care about. I mean, there's a whole field called data visualization that is really about how do you translate data, which is just information or a set of facts, and it's oftentimes just numbers, but how do you translate that into a visual image that really conveys the meaning of what the data is trying to tell you? I think that's super exciting. You see journalists even really starting to use data to tell a story, whether it's how COVID-19 is spreading across the country, or even how education for girls is changing around the world. So for me, that's what I'm really excited about, is that people are using data to tell important stories.
Thank you, Tanya. Our next question is from Anika.
So this question is for Amy, and like Tanya said, there is also many practical purposes for AI. So my question is, are there any ways that AI is being used to help low resource communities?
Yeah, definitely. There are so many examples out there, and I'll share the link to AI for All's website. They actually have a blog where they about a lot of ways that different young people in I'll through their programs. One is Stephanie. She is a daughter of Mexican immigrants in Southern California, which is a rural farming community. And she grew up in this community and went to an AI for All summer camp and realized that she could use AI to monitor contaminated water in her community, because that was a big problem with fertilizer usage. And as someone who grew up in New York City, that's literally a problem I've never thought about in my life. But I think it goes back to everything that Munira and others are saying about how when you bring diverse perspectives to the table, you really get more interesting solutions, right? Including those for under-resourced communities. Just thinking about her research gives me hope for Flint help as well. We had AI for All had another student who came from China, and her grandparents lived in a remote village where birds' nests were taking down power lines pretty regularly. Again, growing up in New York City, we have other problems, but that's not one of them. And she was using AI models to help predict where these birds would build these nests. So before, they would rely on people just looking for the nest, seeing them, and then they would be removed, which isn't as efficient as using AI to predict where those might be, and then you can be a little bit more proactive in solving the problem before it becomes a problem. And then, finally, we had AI for All had a young student who interned with, I believe, the MIT Media Lab, if I recall correctly. But again, it's on the blog, so you can check that out. Who was trying to understand how AI could better help the criminal justice system, because there are a lot of ways in which it's being used today that aren't necessarily fair or good, or it's a word that you might hear a lot when you hear about AI, but it was biased against certain populations. And she was looking at how to make these algorithms less biased based on previous results. So, and historical data. So those are just a couple ways that young people, and these were girls in high school when they were doing this work, are making an impact and using what they're learning to really help their communities as well, which are oftentimes under-resourced. But I'll stop there. I don't know if anyone else has other examples they wanted to share as well that are top of mind for them.
Thank you, Amy. Our next question is from Ananya.
This question is for Munira. What do you believe is the best approach to changing society's preconceived notions about women's abilities in STEM fields?
I want to start by saying thank you for everyone for showing up today. I mean, this is a step in that direction. I mean, because of organizations like Career Girls, and I really truly do feel, in the last 5 or maybe even 10 years, there's been progress. There's been awareness made that this is an area that we have to focus on in order to bring more diversity on the table. And I want to, there's a quote by Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world. Every single one of you, for those of you that are interested in entering STEAM, do it. And that's the first step, right? Is making the change yourself and persevering through just commitment and resiliency at the end of the day. But as we know, it's not easy, and there's tons and tons of challenges. And I'll just give you a real quick personal story. Like I mentioned earlier, I went to UCLA thinking I was going to do computer science, and I was outnumbered, and it was hard. And I was used to being a straight A student, and I got there getting C's and D's in my programming classes. And I very quickly said, well, I like math. I'm going to do that. There's more women there, And I ended up, still getting my specialization in computing. But all my internships were in programming because ultimately it was my passion and I did like doing it. And so finding a way to just push through, and in terms of advice on that end, definitely look for mentors, but also look for sponsors. And there's a difference there. You know, I look at mentor as someone that's going to be there giving you advice on how to move through the world. A sponsor is really someone within your circle who understands your day-to-day struggles and who's going to be there to actually lift you up when you need that. You know, and lastly, I would say, you know, there's responsibility on our institutions, our companies, our schools to provide sponsors and to provide accountability when there isn't diversity. And I'm super excited to see more companies now more than ever put together budgets, actual funding around programs. And I think it's up to us to, again, hold every single one of these. You know, everyone has the best intentions, but we have to all hold people accountable and ask. You know, I heard a great quote from Victoria Alonso. I don't know if you know who she is, but she heads up Marvel Animation Studios. And she said, if you have the chance to be at the table, it's your responsibility to look around and say, where are the other women? And so it's up to us to also hold everyone accountable. But I think we're making great progress, but I think there's still a ways to go.
Thank you so much, Munira. Our next question is from Cynthia.
Hey guys, so I know in quarantine we've had a lot of time to watch a lot of movies, specifically sci-fi movies, and I've noticed in pop culture and the movie industry, AI is sometimes portrayed as the villain. So I was wondering, can AI overpower human control? And if so, how do we know it?
Yeah, I'll start, and Randy, of course, if you want to chime in, I feel like you're actually building and practicing, so would love to hear your thoughts as well. But I think, you know, a couple things in how AI is portrayed in the movies, we are really far from that. We're really far from AI that can, you know, do everything. Right now, AI, I think, is really good at going through a lot of data very quickly and making predictions and things like that. But we're pretty far from a place where like AI can, you know, act and mimic humans in every capacity, right? It tends to be a technology that can do a couple things really well, but unlike humans, it can't like do a lot of things together at the same time, if that makes sense. So I think, you know, from what movies portrayed, we're pretty far from that. But I think there are real dangers in how AI is being used today that aren't being featured in movies because it's not as interesting, probably, but or not as easy to showcase. But, you know, as I mentioned before, AI is being increasingly used in terms of deciding what we see on our social media feeds, what we, you know, how we learn, how we work, how we play, and all those things, right? So we're seeing a lot of challenges in AI where it might not be fairly showing everyone the same thing. So for example, a couple of big recent news items was, you know, they were showing like AI was deciding what kind of ads people should see, but only showing certain ads to certain people, right? So if you think that if the AI is biased in some way, thinking that only men can be computer scientists, which we all know is not true, and they only show men the job ads for computer scientists, that's a real detriment, and that's actually a real challenge that AI is facing today versus like the robots that are taking over the world and destroying everything. So I think it's important to, when you think about the dangers of AI, it's like, yes, of course they exist. And, you know, it's up to us, like Munira said, to hold people accountable, to ask questions, to make sure that our voices are being heard, but it's not going to be the killer robots that you see on TV. But yeah, again, Randy, welcome your perspective, really, especially since you're building in this field.
Yeah, sure, I can chime in. I kind of like the idea of like, what would the movie about AI taking over the world be like, but in real life? I think it would kind of be like kind of like a heist movie where you think you know where it's going the whole time, then it just flips into something completely different. Because right now everyone's like looking for the, I don't know, iRobot, Terminator, what's the maybe I'm aging myself a little bit, but that's what I grew up looking at. You know, everyone's waiting for that. They're like, when are the humanoid robots going to march in and totally take over everything? But what they're forgetting is Amy is saying, like, there are already so many different ways that like AI is kind of taking over. But I guess the other funny thing is like, it's not just the robots by themselves. Like the systems very much depend on human interaction. Humans build them, humans deploy them, humans use them, and like that's what the real superpower is, or evil superpower of AI is. So even, you know, the next time that you, I don't know, scroll down a newsfeed, or when YouTube recommends you a video, like those are spaces where like every day, all of us are probably interacting with like an AI that has already in the past sort of been caught for manipulating people. And then there are other systems happening behind the scenes, like criminal justice and things like that. So then we're the heroes of the story, right? Because we can't just leave it there with the bad guys. There are a ton of people who are working now to make people realize that you can build AI that is better. There's AI that can be done for good. And I totally love Amy's examples about like, you know, people with the water system and things like this. Like, I have no idea about that at all. But even deeper than that, it's like if you build something, it like as you're building it, it has a chance to be used for good or for evil. Just go with the movie theme. And so I think now is the time when people are like learning, like, oh, that thing that I thought would be helpful and maybe like connect people more easily or maybe like share information more easily is actually not having that impact. Okay, how do we like flip this around and do better? And there's like a huge rise of that. And I think that's how we're gonna sort of get through some of the problems that we have today. But yeah, I get asked that all the time. For like a disclaimer, the robots I build are super adorable and super fuzzy. And so that is their superpower for good and for evil, because if it's super adorable, you're like, oh, it's not gonna like harm me or anything like that. And so I have to be really intentional about how it's designed, making sure that, you know, the kids who use it understand what's going on, making sure that it's not saying things that are like kind of manipulative or like, hey, you should go buy some candy. Like, yeah, you should go buy all the candy right now. That would be using its cuteness for evil. I really want it to use its cuteness for things like encouraging the student to spend more time with it so they learn more. Yeah, we'll see.
Thank you, Amy and Randy, for your responses. Our next question is from Hansa.
This question is for Tanya. We all know that STEM has prevalent racial barriers. What has your experience been like working through them and not letting discrimination stop you from achieving your goals?
That's such a great question and an important question, Hansa. I first was introduced to a math community when I was in college. I had the opportunity to attend Spelman College, which is a historically Black college in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's all women. So really my first introduction to what a math community looks like was women of all different backgrounds. I think for me, this made such a difference. So when I went on to graduate school and was working on my doctorate, there were so many moments where I felt really isolated. I felt like I didn't belong. I also doubted my ability to really do the work and to actually complete the Ph.D. But what helped me was that I had just the experience of knowing that there were so many other women who were like me, who actually did go through this process. They were successful and they stayed as mentors, many of my college professors throughout my, well, not just time in graduate school, even as a professional, I've stayed connected to many of them. So those moments where I didn't believe in myself, or I was having a really negative experience where somebody was telling me something that was putting me down, or maybe indicating that they didn't think I could do it, I had a lot of people who could sort of fill in the gap for the time and just really let me know that it was something I was capable of. Whether it was my professors or my mom or my friends, I've surrounded myself with people who really supported me. Certainly there are times when it gets tough, but if you are really focused on the end goal and you have a team around you and you look for role models, even in unlikely places, you really can achieve anything you set your mind to.
Thank you, Tanya. Our next question will be from Shreya.
So this next question is for Randi. Especially since you do something so different, my interest would be to know what is your favorite part about the field that you work in and what is the least favorite?
Yeah. So my favorite part about the field that I work in is that it's so interdisciplinary. If you think about like robots and what they can be used for, there's almost nothing that they can't be used for. So, I'm using it to help children learn, but you could also use them in like a science or biology lab. Actually, right now at my school, they do a lot of COVID testing, and they're using like these really interesting, like kind of jiggly arm robots in order to shake up all the samples so that they can then put them through the process. Robots are taking us to space. There was a launch kind of recently. Robots are used underwater to understand more about, stories of people who lived far, far in the past, or to understand more about like accidents that happened. There are actually robots used for therapy, believe it or not. One that I can think of right now is this like really fuzzy baby seal that's like a pet for people who have dementia, who maybe couldn't take care of a real pet, but companionship is important. All these cool things that you can do with it. And then, did you ask what's my least favorite part? My least favorite part, I think, is, I don't know if this is like, maybe I'm just gonna critique my field a little bit. You can sort of, because it's so, versatile and interdisciplinary, you can get this weird superhero complex where you're like, I'm gonna solve all the problems for all the people. And there's like a good side of that, which is like, use your skills to contribute to society, but technology is not the answer to everything. And I think a lot of times we forget that, and we just assume that adding a robot to the problem will make it better. So I think we probably need to get a little bit better at talking to the people who are going to use it. There are all these different fields and all these different problems. We need to make sure we understand them well. And yeah, always thinking like, a robot could help, but maybe there are other solutions too. And how can we contribute to that? How can we make sure that other voices are heard as we're sort of enjoying this period of time where everyone's thinking about robots and AI?
Thank you so much, Randi. Our next question is from Anika.
So the next question is for Munira, and after hearing about all of your successes in animation and at DreamWorks, I wanted to know how you chose your field and when did you know that it was right for you?
That's a good question, Anika. It's funny, like when I was growing up, I had no idea that there was opportunities for me to work in entertainment or in animation, especially as a technologist. I had no idea even careers like that existed. And so, when like I said, I went to UCLA thinking I was going to do computer science, and then I switched to math, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll do something in business. Then I thought maybe I'll be an actuary. So, like I think Randi or someone else said, like, you could just kind of move through the world and just try different things. My biggest advice is to get practical exposure to each thing that you think you might be interested in. Maybe it's through classes, maybe it's through just on the side, like you can download software and try it out. I did it through internships and jobs. So I had a job working at NASA because I thought I wanted to be a scientist one summer. And then ultimately I got an internship working at Rhythm and Hues, which is a visual effects studio. And that's when I realized, oh, I could have a job working on movies. This is cool. And even though I thought, honestly, when I first got my internship there, that it was a total fluke and that it must have been a mistake that they picked me. Actually, by the end of the internship, I just completely fell in love with it. And I applied for another internship. And then as soon as I graduated, I applied for a full-time job. And it wasn't, again, I didn't get that internship until I was in my second to last year of college. So leading up until then, I had no idea this is what I wanted to do. So again, just continuing to try things and move, until you find something you're passionate about. And then guess what? You may do it for a couple years and then decide to switch again anyways, and that's okay. But yeah. that's a little bit about my story.
Thank you for your response, Munira. Our next question is from Ananya.
This question is for Tanya. Who are some role models, whether historical figures or people in your personal life, that have helped you reach the position that you are at today?
Well, I love this question. Thank you, Honora. So I would say in my personal life, two women that had a great influence on me were two of my college professors in math, Dr. Chou and Dr. Peterson. And the thing is that they were my hardest teachers, the most challenging, the toughest teachers. And what I learned from them was that they really were able to bring out the best in me. And I also just realized that they really did a great job in preparing me for a rigorous course of study in graduate school. Most importantly, they cared about who I was as a person. They cared about what was going on in my life. So that combination that they gave me of both the challenge and rigor with true, genuine care really made a difference for my life. Historically speaking, there's two women I've been thinking a lot about lately, Dorothy Hoover and Gladys West. These are both women who grew up in the time of our country that was really tough. There was the Great Depression. As Black women, they were living through legalized segregation in our country. And as Black women, they had really limited educational opportunities, but they loved math. And they had big dreams, big visions for what they could do. And regardless if it was something that really matched what they saw or what people felt like they could do, they kept pursuing the next step in their journey. So they studied math, they went on to college. And what is so exciting is that they really used that to be in service to our country. So Gladys West worked in the US Navy, and she was part of the team that helped to develop GPS, which is something we all use today. Dorothy Hoover, she worked at NASA, and she really worked on modeling, aerodynamics with different kinds of wings that could be used for aircraft. And this was really important during the time of the space race. So I feel so inspired by both of them, both that they were able to see a life for themselves that was different than anything that they could see around them, and that they were committed to really pursuing that goal. They worked really hard, and they were able to do really important things for our country. And so I hold them up as inspiration, especially in moments that are really just tough. And you don't really know if it's something, if you can do the next step or be something that you don't really see in front of you. I know that if they did it, that I can do it. Because they existed and because they stayed committed, they made the path a little bit easier for women like me and like you.
Thank you for your response, Tanya. So we're actually running a bit late on time, so we're going to be taking some questions from the chat. But I just wanted to say thank you so much to all our panelists and our speakers for being today and for sparking such an insightful discussion from which we all benefited a lot from. So thank you once again for coming here and taking the time. So yeah, now we will take some questions from the chat. So first we have Emily T, and she asked, how powerful do you think AIs can become?
As powerful as you think they can become, because you're going to help build them. Does anyone have a better answer? Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, Randy, I love that answer. And I think something that, I hope all of our conversations and underscore today is that, with technology, people are behind that technology, right? Like, so we are all in control of how it's developed and how it's built. Much like like Tanya said, we're responsible for how data is presented and how we use math, right? And Munira, like how we represent people in animation. Those are all people making those decisions. And the answer around, it's really about how powerful do we want to get, but also keeping in mind as you're building, as you're creating these new technologies, who are you creating these technologies for, and how do you make sure that it's really serving them if that's what you want to do, and making sure that if their voices can't be literally in the room for some reason, how are you making sure that you're checking in with the people you're building for?
Thank you for your all's responses. Our next question is from Paula, and she asked, what are the different career paths in AI and robotics?
I mean, I'll speak up. I mean, have you guys, it's funny, like, have you guys been to Disneyland, all the animatronics? A lot of that is all robotics. And even AI, we use that in animation as well. Specifically around, there's a lot of technology that behind, especially if you guys watch movies, we use a lot of AI to create realistic effects. So when you see like a person that's totally fake but looks real, a lot of that's built through AI technology. So I mean, you wouldn't expect to find it in visual effects animation, at least I didn't, but I think it's everywhere. And then of course, I'm sure Amy and Randy have lots of examples of where this technology kind of comes into play in terms of careers.
It's funny, I was gonna mention Disney too, because I saw like the Avatar the Oracle, I think but yeah, that's the coolest robot ever. I think another cool one, maybe people don't think about, is like how you can use AI inside of like music. Like right now, like, a lot of, like, it's a huge industry, and there are many places like in music distribution, but also music making. They're starting to use robotics and things like that, even to make like really cool robot art pieces, but really it's about the music. It's about the experience and preserving culture and reimagining culture.
Absolutely, and I'll give, I know, Linda, if you want to share the Career Girls link, I feel like you put together such a great resource around this exact questions with videos and interviews to really showcase the diversity of possibilities. And I think something that's also really exciting about this field is we don't know. There are more, and they'll continue to be discovered, and they'll continue to be created as you enter the field, which is really exciting. And I think also, the other thing too is that I think AI in particular is just going to touch more and more careers. So much like I don't need to know how to build a computer to know that I literally am on it, but every minute that I'm at work, especially these days, I think AI, people will have to know how to use AI, even if they don't know how to build it, more and more so.
Yes, thank you, Amy. And that gives me the opportunity to say, and you'll hear from Karen Peterson more, but we're going to have links to information, we call them empowerment lessons, about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. You'll get to hear from Randi. She's in a couple of those videos that we have. And it's each of these women really talking about the different types of careers in AI, why you should be planning and considering a career in AI. And then we have all sorts of downloadable curriculum that your teachers can use, a fun page activity that you can use on your own. But we'll be sending links as a follow-up to the town hall.
Thank you guys for all that information. Our next question is also from Paula, and she asked, how do we go about getting AI and robotics internships for high school or for high school students?
That's a really good question, and I'll be honest to say that's not easy right now. And I don't mean that to be discouraging in any way, but just wanted to be honest. It's actually something that I thought about a lot when I was at AI for All, and AI for All has a number of programs for high school students and we work really hard to get them internships and things like that. And I think something that can be hard in the field is because it is so new broadly. They're looking, unfortunately, a lot for PhD students like Randi to fill those internship spots. But I think again that will continue to change. I'm very confident that will change very rapidly as we start and like AI for All is really actually doing a ton of work and advocacy around this, but building the skills at a younger and younger age so that you don't need to be, getting a PhD, which would be great. All of you should, if you want to do that for sure. But I think they're fighting quite a bit with different companies to make sure that those internships are more accessible. So I think as a practical, it is helpful to have an adult help you navigate that, whether it's through a summer program like AI for All or Girls Who Code or Black Girls Code or a number of different programs that exist. I think having an adult to help you navigate that right now, or who has connections to a local university that might have an AI facility if you live near one. I think that's the path. Unfortunately, it's a lot of legwork now, but rest assured that it's top of mind for a lot of people to make that an easier process.
Yeah.
And
Go
yeah.
ahead. I was just gonna
I was
add.
just gonna say.
Yeah, go for it.
No, sorry, I was just gonna open it up actually. So
Okay.
Perfect, Munira.
No, I was just gonna add. I mean, if that's something that someone's interested in, leading up to even if you don't have a PhD, there's so many internships that probably would benefit a career in AI, even just like a software programming internship, and those I think would be a lot easier to get, especially at a younger age. So I would encourage you to sort of head down that path as early as you can, and then and build yourself up to that. And like Amy said, hopefully those opportunities will get presented for ages even younger than they are today. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Our last question from the chat is from Emily and Ellie, and they asked, where do you think you would be if you didn't choose your current career?
I actually have an answer for that. Like Cynthia said at the beginning, I really love traveling, and I spent a summer in like central Mexico in this like small village, and I was just teaching girls how to program. And especially like now with the pandemic, I'm like, why didn't I just stay? Like that would be so much better, like so much less stress. But yeah, I think I'd be traveling more, probably in a different country.
I think for me, my career has actually taken a lot of unexpected paths, as I mentioned briefly before. So right now I work in financial services, maybe generously loosely tied to math, but it's a lot more about client relationships and things like that. But I've also worked at a tech company, and I've also worked again at the AI for All, which is a nonprofit focused on AI. I think careers are really long these days, and you do get a lot of opportunities to do different things. And so I think about where I would be if I wasn't doing what I was doing now. I guess I find that I do a lot of things in my spare time. I mentor people. I sit on boards of nonprofits. You can have your career take a lot of different shapes instead of just like, this is my one job and this was my one forever job and that's it. There are a lot of ways to get involved and do other things that you're passionate about. I think for me, if I could do anything and money was kind of not an issue or a concern, I think I would really like to coach a girls sports team. I coached at the high school and college level a sport called Ultimate Frisbee, which you may or may not be familiar with. But I really loved that experience in teaching girls who had never played a team sport before how to do that and really growing the team. Unfortunately, it's not really a profitable sport just yet. So, but I think if I could make that my paid career, I would love to do that.
For me, I feel like I'm getting the chance to do what I love. So this is really hard to answer. But if for some reason I really just couldn't do what I'm doing now, other areas of my life that I'm pretty passionate about are yoga and meditation. And so I would probably have like my own yoga studio for people of all ages and different backgrounds, and really expose them to strategies for really creating peace in their life and wellness in their bodies and their minds. And I think I would have a lot of fun doing that, as well as just have a great sense of fulfillment.
Yeah, just like Tanya, within animation, I've had a lot of different paths. I went on more on the business side, then on the tech side, then on the art side. So I feel like I've had the opportunity to move around within the field. But if tomorrow I wasn't in this career, I think I'd honestly, like I said, I'm a mother of two, and I would probably spend more time with my family and travel. That's what I do.
Thank you, Emily and Ellie, for that question. And thank you to our 4 speakers for providing us with such great insights on these multiple and exciting career paths for girls in AI, robotics, and visual arts technology.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. So I'm Karen Peterson. I'm the founder and CEO of the National Girls Collaborative Project. I don't know about you, but I'm super inspired and excited. It's a great way to sort of end our day. And I want to thank the leaders of our Girls Advisory Board for designing and leading this town hall. We should, I think, give everybody a round of applause. We've got those little emoticons, right, that we can share. Thank you all who joined us for contributing to this really important conversation. And I also want to add my thanks to our amazing role models who are sharing their pathways to help the next generation. And then a special appreciation to Linda Calhoun and her colleagues at Career Girls. We couldn't ask for better collaborators or partners. As Linda mentioned, we will be posting resources and the recording on the NGCP website where you registered. And we'll distribute that link to you in a few days, along with sort of a list of the resources that we've been accumulating and talking about. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'll also be sending you a link to a very short survey because we would like to get your feedback about this town hall. It's the first one that we've done together, and we had so much fun planning it, and we're so inspired. I think I can say that we're going to do another one, right, Linda?
Absolutely.
Right? So, closing thoughts from anyone before we go off with our amazing inspiration that we got from this last hour?
Well, can I just add another thanks to our role models and the entire team at the National Girls Collaborative Project and this amazing Girls Advisory Board. It's just been a pleasure, and the discussion was really thoughtful and stimulating, and thank you.
Great, thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your afternoon or evening. We're so glad that you could join us, and keep in touch.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have a good evening or afternoon.